And he just stands there. And he goes, "What do you want me to do?" All by himself. And they go, "You're the first real authority that we've recognized here. What do you want us to do?" And he said, "I want you to back up." So all the protesters took about 10 steps back, and then he turns and he tells the BLM, "You guys need to leave. You're not really going to do this on international television and shoot people over cows." And for some reason, they left. It was a miracle. It was a complete miracle. And then when that reporter asked me about it, that's what I was trying to say. That these women really did an amazing, courageous thing. And somebody think that I actually was going to hide behind women. Here, shoot her first. And then they shoot her. Well, they're going to kill me now, so I got to get behind another one. You know? Glad that there was about 10 women in front of me. I wasn't even there. Okay, I got there too late. I got to help the cows come home, and that was it. Okay, and so this video that you're going to see now, right off the news. I didn't make this up. This is all we're after. We want peace officers to keep the peace and enforce the Constitution. This deputy does it. Watch this. Okay. Well. Oh, for gosh sakes.
The YouTube video going viral, posted on the internet by two activists who brought a camera into the Albany International Airport while they passed out flyers. Now, it led to a heated dispute over First Amendment rights. Beth Wortman has our top story. Beth?
Hi, Benita. Well, as you'll see in the video clip, an airport spokesman tries to stop these activists from their mission, but a sheriff's deputy steps in to settle the confrontation and the right to free speech.
So, hey everyone, this is Ashley Jessica. I'm here at Albany International Airport.
The young woman is standing outside the security checkpoint at the airport, telling the camera that she's there to hand out flyers to travelers, reminding them of their right to opt out of getting a body scan, which she claims carries health risks.
Okay, hold on. First of all, turn this off right away.
Airport spokesman Doug Myers tells the crew to stop videotaping and to go downstairs, which they agree to do, and they are confronted again.
Do you have $1 million insurance policy here? You're violating the airport authority guidelines. That doesn't matter to us at all, okay?
Doesn't matter to us about your constitutional rights. You're violating airport guidelines.
You're in our airport.
But as the tension builds, Sheriff's Deputy Stan Lennox steps in, separating the two parties, then lays down the law.
Obviously, this is your constitutional right, okay? As far as we're concerned, you're not breaking any laws.
Okay, he said, we're concerned. He called somebody before he did this. He had to have. I'm sure he called the supervisor, maybe a captain, maybe somebody else saying, look, let's not make a big deal out of this. This is their constitutional right. A deputy enforcing that. Man, this is miraculous. We could have heard about this in the news and how they're getting sued because they all got arrested. He doesn't allow that here. Watch.
Okay, that's what we want to get across to you guys.
Myers objects, ordering airport employees to allow only ticketed passengers upstairs, accusing the activists of blocking the escalator. But once again, Deputy Lennox defends their First Amendment rights.
So that means we're doing it for, I told you, I'm Jason Burns. Let me see your identification.
You can show him my identification. He doesn't have to show you his identification.
The activists continue their mission. The video later posted to YouTube and goes viral. Not the kind of attention Deputy Lennox is used to.
That's a little overwhelming. I mean, I was doing my job. I did the right thing. I felt I did the right thing, protecting people's First Amendment rights.
The YouTube video going
Amazing. This deputy actually knowing and understanding his job. I did the right thing. I felt I did the right thing. This ended so peacefully. These people continue to hand out flyers. Okay, big deal. Why does the airport just say, let the people throw them away if they don't want them? Okay? And we're going to do another video right now. This is all we're after. And in fact, that deputy received the 2013 CSPOA Deputy Sheriff of the Year. They've done that one time. We met Deputy Lennox. It was in the same year that Sheriff Clark received Sheriff of the Year. David Clark from Milwaukee. You've probably seen him a time or two. Yeah. And so this, though, happens in Stockton, California, and is just the opposite of what we're after. And now, here again, folks, you're going to be amazed. I'm going to show you. Maybe we leave one light on so I can show you, but turn these off up here maybe, and we'll let you guys take a look at this. Stockton, California.
Now to a News 10 exclusive, a Stockton
About
man
4 years
wants
ago.
an apology tonight for a wake-up call he should have never received. It is a story you'll only see on News 10. Lee Painter tells us why police and federal agents knocked down his door.
This is what they did to my door
At 6 this morning, a SWAT team surprised Kenneth Wright at his front door.
in my underwear. In my underwear. Before I get to the door, I hear him say, hit it. And I get ready to hit the door, and they hit the door. They almost hit me. So I said, hold on. They hit it again. I said, hold on.
But the SWAT team busted in, taking Wright.
They come grab me by my neck and drag me out my house to right there in the grass.
Thrown to the ground and handcuffed, law enforcement then searched his house.
And they put me in the backseat of a police car for over 6 hours. From 6 o'clock to 12:30. They had me handcuffed in the back of a police car with nothing on but my ripped up underwear that they ripped in the yard.
Right then, they also took 3 children, holding them for 2 hours. But they failed to find their quarry, Wright's estranged wife. Wright later complained to Stockton's mayor and police, but the city pointed to the U.S. Department of Education.
U.S. Department of Education. Anybody thinks that they should be coming in with a SWAT team doing a no-knock warrant? This is a no-knock warrant. Correct me if I'm wrong. That battering ram went through that door, you come to the front door, you announce who you are, and you bam the door in. That's what they did. That's a no-knock warrant. And this was because his wife, a strange wife who doesn't even live there, didn't pay back her student loan. Oh. Now, then they interview somebody from the Solicitor General's office, and he goes, we don't do that. We don't raid people's homes because they didn't pay back their student loan. But we can't tell you what this is about because it's an ongoing investigation. Okay? Man. The investigation's public now. Why don't you just say this is because she committed fraud? Okay? Still, a SWAT team? What could be the worst thing that happened on this delinquent loan? Okay, she made up stuff about why to get it. That's probably the most. Those happens a lot of times. Still no SWAT team. So they say they do not do that. Then, if any of you want to look this up, the special agent in charge for the U.S. Marshals in Houston, they did one there against another black man. His loan was over 20 years old for $1,500 or something like that. They raid his home with the SWAT team. Turns out they had 1,500 to 2,500 more warrants to serve, and what were they on? Delinquent student loans. So they're going to continue to lie, they're going to continue to do this kind of stuff, and when federal agents come into your community and do this kind of overhanded, stupid stuff, people are going to get hurt, and who's going to protect the citizens in your county and your state from this kind of ridiculous law enforcement? And this just proves how we don't need the federal government in our lives to come out and do this kind of crap. They don't have anything else better to do that they're doing this. And the guy that they interviewed, and you can look this up on YouTube, this has been pretty recent that this has happened, I'd say within the last year and a half. And he says, we're just following orders. The judges tell us to do these.
Nuremberg all over again.
Did I hear Nuremberg? No. My students know what Nuremberg was. In case you just don't know what Nuremberg was, those were the trials where Nazi officers were put on trial for the death camps and murder. And what did they use an excuse? Well, we were just following orders. You can't get us. We were just following orders. I hear another officer say that. I think I'm going to throw him through the television set. This is just ridiculous that we use the same terminology that those Nazis used. No. So, yeah, this guy got pretty
out of it. You owe a student loan, and you gotta pay it. I just had my door kicked in because of this.
With the help of the Stockton
So he says, you better pay your student loans. Okay? Now get this. Now, yeah, you can probably turn all the lights on now. I think everybody can see this, but thank you for doing that. Can everybody read that? There are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Yeah. Not only that, anybody remember somebody by the name of John Jay? He was the first Supreme Court Justice of the United States, appointed by Washington. Okay? John Jay says, not only are you to judge the facts of the case, but you are to judge the law. The jury has the right to judge the law. Where have we gone since then? Where have we been? Where did we go, Jody Magic?
We learned that.
But I totally believe John Jay. He was correct. But now you have all these judges who say, no, you cannot judge the constitutionality, or you cannot judge the law. The law is the law. That's the way it is. You're only here to judge the facts. I was in, what town was it? Oh, Fresno. And there was a guy that actually asked me to come out there in a traffic matter. And the judge said, when I was there, they finally let me get on the stand, and then the judge wouldn't let me say anything. He let me take the stand, but he wouldn't let me say anything. So I was trying to judge the law about what this guy was getting charged for. And I was just saying how inappropriate it was. It was a bad law. And no, you can't say that. He says, in this courtroom, we are not to talk about the constitutionality of any law. And so I wanted to ask the judge, but I'd already been shut down. I want to ask the judge, did you take an oath of office when you took your job? We all know he did. Yeah. What did he promise to do? Uphold and defend the Constitution. But the Constitution could not even be talked about in his courtroom. Well, what did he take an oath for? It applies to your job here as judge, Your Honor. You know? And he's a former cop, and now he's, went to law school and became a judge. And I'm just wondering, if he knows anything about this principle. I didn't write this, okay? A lot of people say, oh, Sheriff Mack, that's you talking. We should disobey unjust laws. And then, of course, the first thing we're going to think of, who decides what's unjust? Well, first of all, we the people do. Secondly, the states do. And most importantly, the person who took the oath. You have to know and understand what is just and unjust. Oh, wow. Is there ever a gray area? Well, I'm sure there is. But it's very small. Right and wrong come into play here. And this wasn't me. This was Martin Luther King. I totally agree with this. I totally believe it. We should not enforce unjust, unconstitutional law. Law enforcement has said this for years. Well, we'll wait for the Supreme Court to decide. Do you know how many cases will actually get to the Supreme Court? And that you're actually going to continue to enforce an unjust, unconstitutional law until the Supreme Court decides. And if they never decide, you get to just keep doing it forever. Why don't you decide? And one of these, I'm going to tell you right now, there's two areas where law enforcement has been wrong, and badly wrong. But the Supreme Court says, okay, or everybody does it. Excuses, excuses. I expect those excuses from excuse makers, but not from constitutional officers. One of them is asset forfeiture. We have been wrong on that. Am I in favor of asset forfeiture? Absolutely. But the way it's done? Absolutely not. I have a friend that owns a gun show. His name's Rex Curley. He left the gun show. Gets pulled over for speeding. He has a bunch of cash on him. Guess where from? The gun show. I know this man. He is not a drug dealer. He does gun shows. They confiscated $150,000 in cash from him. He never got it back. Ever. Didn't get it back. Officers, they did steal it. And the courts allow it, and this whole stupid thing about how you have to prove it. Well, he tried to go prove how he got it. And he proved how he got it. And he still didn't get it back. And this is ridiculous that we go after people because they have cash. It's absurd, it's wrong, and it's counterproductive. Now, if you want to go after somebody after he's found guilty, that's a different story. Go get him. Especially if it's somebody who's human trafficking. If you can prove that his assets were ill-gotten and illegal, take everything. When I was sheriff, we had a guy that got arrested for drugs. Now they're going to take his home. His wife is going, why am I losing my home? Because your husband was a drug dealer. And I said, you guys, this is where she and her kids live. What do you want to do? Just throw them to the street? She wasn't the drug dealer. Oh, well, she had to have known about it. Well, prove it and charge her. And if you can't, we're not taking her home. Okay? Do we need the Supreme Court running our sheriff's office here?
No.
That's
not their job.
That's not their job, and it's hopefully one of these guys here. And I mean that sincerely. I really hope one of these guys wins. But the thing of it is, you're the one to run it. It is yours, and you're representing the people. You are the people's representative in law enforcement, in keeping the peace, in public service. You are that person. And I'm not going to violate that. Another one. You ready for this? Ready for the other one? Administrative checkpoints and DUI checkpoints. I've been part of them before, okay? And then I found out it violates the Fourth Amendment. Oh, well, the Supreme Court says we can't. The Supreme Court's not running your office. And you know how simple it would be to make them? I did this class in Virginia. The Sheriff Green, left the room to go on lunch break. He went and changed his policy. Changed it right out of the policy and procedure, the Bible, for law enforcement. He went and changed it. All you have to do is make them voluntary. But you have to keep that. Okay? Announce that they're voluntary. Have a sign that they're voluntary. That's where the citizens are now participating voluntarily. They're giving up their Fourth Amendment rights to probable cause. We cannot make stops without probable cause. It's illegal. I don't care what the Supreme Court says. You have, oh, well, we're going to do this because it's get DUIs off the road. Well, you know what? How often do we do administrative checkpoints? What, 2 times a year? 3 times a year? Memorial Day? New Year's Eve? Maybe one other time? What are you doing the rest of the time? Should be running it every day. There's DUIs every day, every weekend. Another time is Super Bowl Sunday. Another one, everybody's drinking, okay? Everybody drinks here, okay? We know that. Why don't we just sit outside the bars and the dance halls and wait for everybody to stop and stop everybody? We're not allowed to do that either. It's not probable. You have to have probable cause. Folks, the Constitution requires by the supreme law of the land probable cause for a stop. If you're not doing that, you are violating your oath. Let's work them out where we can do them constitutionally. In fact, you know what? A lot of these places that now don't do them, in fact, they're illegal in Texas. Can't do them. But do you know that even when you ask them and let everybody know it's voluntary, they still pull through. Even drunks still pull through. Because they're afraid if they turn around and you're going to stop them anyway, they say, well, man, well, hide the bottles, you know. You'll still be able to you will still get people off the road. And is it probable cause to stop somebody who turns around? No, that's not probable cause. But can you try to go get a driving pattern? That's okay. Let's set the example. Let's follow the law. Those are 2 areas where law enforcement has been very outside of the law.
What about agricultural checkpoints and state lines?
Yeah, now the agricultural thing, I consider that voluntary. I do them, you know, and I always have apples in our car when we go through. We're trying to go to Disneyland, you know. But I also know people who refused them. And I also know people, I tell you, the next time that I go through El Paso on I-10, I promise this to my students because we've studied this. We've studied a lot. And they stop there, and you stop, and they go up to you, and they go, "Are you an American citizen?" And next time I go through, I'm going to go, "Sí, señor, soy americano." And I promised my students I would do that. So I'm going to see what happens. Because there's a video, you can look at the videos of the guys who refuse to answer. Okay? And this guy, one guy gets beat up, but this one guy also, a supervisor gets up there and he goes, "I don't have to answer you." He goes, "Am I under arrest?" "No, you're not under arrest." Well, am I being detained? No, you're not being detained. I said, well, I'll see you later then. He goes, no, you can't leave. Well, then I'm being detained. He goes, so he's talking English, you know, and they know darn well he's an American citizen. Does this prove that I'm an American citizen because I say yes to their question? Everybody can say yes and keep going through. Now, are they running their dog around your car? Yes, most of the time. They're seeing if the dog will hit for marijuana or coke or something. So it's a stupid thing anyway, but the thing of it is the guy knew his rights and the supervisor told him to leave. It's on video. Says, okay, you can. I mean, it took about 10 minutes for that guy, and otherwise it would have taken him about 3 seconds just to say. But it was a matter of principle for him, and it's a matter of principle for me too. So we need to set the example in law enforcement. So some of those are the checkpoint I'm talking about. It's not at the border. It's on I-10, and so that's why I'm going to tell them, "Sí, señor, soy americano." I speak pretty good Spanish too, so if they want us to keep going in Spanish, that's fine with me. But I'm just really curious as to what they're going to do. But if my wife's with me and she's filming the whole thing, they're going to know this blonde girl, that I'm really not. But why not talk Spanish? They all speak Spanish. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I know. We'll see how it goes.
Do we get to see that on YouTube?
Yeah, if I get hauled off, I'm sure. Okay?
Sure.
So here's the oath of office. The oath is different in a lot of states, but not too much. And a lot of the oaths will actually say what the military oath says. To protect it from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Well, who else are you going to protect it from? Really, seriously, let's look at this, okay? I'm going to protect the Second Amendment, okay? Who are you protecting the Second Amendment from? Criminals? Gangs? Well, they might steal my gun, but they're not taking away my rights.
Right.
I can go get another gun. When you say you're protecting the Second Amendment, you're protecting my right to keep and bear arms from government officials. That's what it is. Quit trying to pretend. Some law enforcement officials actually will say that because I promoted a gun range, I'm staunch Second Amendment guy. What? Because you have a gun range? No, I want to see how you're protecting my right or the rights of your citizen to keep and bear arms. Okay? And the state of California is really on the wrong side of the Second Amendment. And you're going to go along with it? The sheriffs of this state should tell them no. You know when they shut down the water in the Napa Valley and in Merced County, I went out there to campaign for a sheriff a little while ago. God, I got his name here, Vern. Anyway, I saw all the desolation of the almond farms and the other farmland there and the dust that was there. It wasn't because of a drought. The federal government shut off the dam. And about 25 sheriffs should have marched up there and turned the water back on. Are you going to protect your citizens or not? You're going to let the federal government destroy all these farms and cost all these farmers their livelihoods? All the money that cost? When Trump came out there campaigning, guess what he said? This isn't a drought. And people, oh, the press, is he crazy? It wasn't a drought. Are you having a drought? Yes, you were. But it was a man-made drought. It was not the drought. They shut off the water. Why would the federal government destroy that? And why would we allow it? The governor and the sheriffs, turn the water back on, for heaven's sakes. They're not the boss of your water. Okay, this one you got to see. You want to hit some of the lights back there, just maybe a couple of them. Not the other way. Yeah, right there.
You took an oath, if you recall, when you first came to work for me, and I don't mean to the National Security Advisor of the United States. I mean to his boss. And I don't mean the president. He gave you word to his boss. He gave you word to the people of the United States. Your word is who we are.
You know, I agree with James Earl Jones. It is a matter of integrity. Do we take an oath that we intend not to keep? That would be perjury. Would it also be un-American? Some people actually call that treason. If you take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution and intentionally violate it. There's only one person responsible for you keeping your oath. You. Do we swear, I promise that I will uphold and defend the Constitution as long as my sergeant lets me? Or as long as the United States Supreme Court allows me to? Or, my oath is, I will do whatever the Supreme Court tells me. Or, how about this one? I will enforce all laws. I don't pick and choose. When I did this for the Las Vegas sheriffs in Clark County, sheriff candidates, there were 4 of them there. One of them got up and said, Murray gets up and says, for anybody to say that we enforce all laws is either a lie or stupid. Because we don't, we never have, and police discretion has always been a part of our jobs. And we don't enforce all the laws. For instance, somebody runs a stop sign. You have to write them a ticket, right? Is there a law saying thou shalt write him a ticket? No, that's ridiculous. In fact, I don't have to stop him at all, do I? If I don't want him, what if I'm on another call? I remember I was on an accident, it was a drowning, and I was primary officer, and somebody runs a red light right in front of me, and I said, man, I'm gonna go get that ticket first. No, you don't. And the people in the community, I'm not going code 3. Ambulance and fire department are already on the way. Okay? I'm not the life-saving guy. I'm there to write the report. I'm not going code 3, but I gotta get there as quick as I can. I did not stop. People in the community would say, what's that stupid cop doing? He didn't even stop that guy. What's he doing? He's probably going on break. He's probably going to get a donut and he's too late. You know. But you know what? That's going to happen. Because my job was to get to the call that I was assigned. Okay? I'm not writing that ticket. So, I didn't have to stop him. We don't have to stop him. I can give him a verbal warning. I can give him a written warning. I can tell him, go back and drive through that intersection again and do it right. I've seen cops do that. I can do any type of enforcement I want. I do not have to write that ticket, nor do I have to enforce the traffic laws at all if I don't want to. There's nothing there. For anybody to say, we enforce all the laws, then how many jaywalkings have you written this month? How many could you get there? Yeah. I mean, in New York, you could write thousands of those a day. I mean, oh my goodness. When I'm in New York City, you know what? If it's clear, if the intersection's clear, I go. Okay? I'm walking, but I'm going to go. Okay? Speaking of break, maybe we all need a break real quick. Okay, let's take 5 minutes and take a brain break. That's what we call it at school. Take a brain break on both ends. The professor at the FBI Academy said, oh, and I told you I lasted more than a week, right? I graduated. Okay, this is the supreme law of the land that requires each of us in every state to take the oath. The senators and representatives before mentioned, that's U.S. Congress, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial officers. So, under which 3 separation of powers does the sheriff fall? Is he part of the judicial branch? No. He's not a judge. Legislative branch? No, he's not a lawmaker. Is he the executor of the law? Yes, he's the executive branch. Okay, all police All sheriffs are executive branch. Top executive. Actually, Jefferson said that the sheriff was the top executive of the county. Both of the United States and of the several states shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. You're not supporting another law. You're not supporting... let me just ask a legal question, okay? Which is more supreme and which supersedes the other? Traffic laws or the Bill of Rights? Just throwing that out there, okay? Okay. So that's a pretty easy one to know. State nullification. Did Sheriff Mack make that up? Did I make that up? No. No. Guess who did? Jefferson and Madison. And in response to John Adams, President Adams, who was kind of weird, he forgot about his founding father foundation, he supported a law called the Alien and Sedition Act, and he actually had people arrested for bad-mouthing him. He got so hurt, and his little feelings were so hurt, and I guess he was kind of a sensitive guy, and he and Jefferson didn't get along very well, but Jefferson was his vice president. And wouldn't that be fun to have today? Whoever finishes second is the vice president in the presidential race. Yeah, wouldn't that be fun? Yeah. Hillary as vice president right now. Yeah, I know. So, or we would have had Obama and McCain, Obama and Romney. That would have been fun. So anyway, not much difference. So the states, look, Jefferson's, so they write these Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, and in those they said the states have the authority to judge the constitutionality of the federal law. They're talking about the Alien Sedition Act. In other words, they were saying, look, we don't have to go to Congress and fight Congress to nullify or repeal this stupid law. So the states can do it. And it's a principle that we're dealing with here. The states do not have to bow down to the stupidity of the federal government's laws. And for them to, anybody to think so, just doesn't understand the 10th Amendment or state sovereignty. They're not our boss. Okay, and my case will bear that out, and I'll show that to you when we get there. So they also, Madison, Jefferson argued states should refuse to enforce laws which they deemed unconstitutional. So now we're already seeing the Supreme Court is not the ultimate decider on this, and not only that, the Supreme Court does not have the time or the resources to judge every law that's unconstitutional. Believe me, after I spent 3.5 years taking this case to the Supreme Court and winning, there's not enough money to do all that. If you have, so you tell, well, if you don't have the money, then poor citizen, we're just going to keep abusing you because I know you can't take it to the Supreme Court. Ha! And I don't have to do what you say until the courts tell me to. That's why we took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, because we're all bound by it, and that we're all promised at every level of government that we would enforce the Constitution. In other words, if we leave it all to the Supreme Court, they become a 9-member monarchy, and we don't have to do anything locally to keep our oath. No, that's not how the system was established. And Madison, boy, I love this word. It's been talked about today several times. Interpose. Does everybody know what interpose means? You have to know this word. Okay? And look what he actually is saying around this. That the state legislature is duty-bound to interpose its power to prevent the federal government from victimizing its people. Now, the best example I've ever seen on this is Michael Perutka from the Institute on the Constitution. Okay? He knows how to show you interpose. And he brings out a sword and a shield and brings out people from the audience. I just keep interpose real simple. Basketball. Okay? I played a lot of basketball. And what is my job? To interpose between the offensive player and the goal. And I'm going to do everything I can legally, so I don't foul out, to keep him away from the goal. And if he moves, I move. And wouldn't that be wonderful to have sheriffs all across this country and deputies and others just like Deputy Lennick? Deputy Lennick interposed. He put himself in the way. And if it hadn't been Lennox, somebody probably would have got arrested that day for passing out flyers. Can you imagine? We're going to talk about that more. But interpose is simply put yourself in the way. Isn't that really what parents are for? Isn't that really what we've promised to do in this country, that we would defend the people? Interpose to make sure that that we're not allowing the federal government to victimize our citizens. Who are we supposed to protect rights from? Well, it's what Jefferson called two enemies of the people, government and criminals.
Maybe the same.
Yeah, he added that too. Yeah. So this is Sheriff Prince from Montana, and yours truly from Arizona. We're the ones in this case. And this is the first big, huge quote from Justice Scalia. And this was actually a quote from a New York decision back in 1992 when New York sued the federal government to tell them that we don't have to enforce your laws about taking nuclear waste. They were going to dump nuclear waste in the state of New York. And the state of New York comes back and says, oh, no, you're not. And they go, well, yes, we are. And they said, okay, we'll sue you. And they won. And in that decision, they said, we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Folks, just because your state doesn't know that doesn't mean you don't. And we are not subject to federal direction. If state legislatures are not subject to federal direction, does that mean, well, city legislatures are?
No.
Or county commissioners are they? Board of Supervisors. Sheriffs, but they are, right? They have to take orders from the Fed. Ridiculous. That's what I filed the whole suit on, is that they can't tell me what to do. And so this Scalia quoted, this was an established precedent that he quoted. Okay? And this is Judge Roll. When I was in his courtroom, he actually said in his ruling, and his ruling was the best of any of them. His was better than any district court judge. He actually gave us the Fifth Amendment, too, because it violated my rights to due process. And because of the threat of arrest. Now, Judge Roll was incensed by their threat of arresting us. He was really ticked off by it. But you get this. We won in Judge Roll's court every single pretrial motion. All of them. Judge Roll interposed for me. Because Janet Reno tried to remove me, and her lawyers tried to remove me for standing. That the county can sue, but the sheriff cannot. Well, our Board of Supervisors wanted nothing to do with this. My county attorney wanted nothing to do with this. And I never even went and asked him because I knew that I'm going to go ask the county attorney to please sue me on my behalf. You know, he wasn't certified to go either. So anyway, so what I did, the only thing I did was I took $500 of my own cash, took it over to the general fund and got a receipt, told them put this in there just in case I'm taking phone calls or I'm making phone calls or anything else that might be some expense I've already paid for. So obviously that never went public, but anyway, I did it. So Mack is forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the law or the act, subjecting himself to possible sanctions. In other words, the sanctions were the threat of arrest aimed at us. Well, let me go back to this just a little bit. When we were talking about the threat of arrest, Janet Reno actually wrote a memo to the judge and said, we're not going to arrest the sheriffs. And the intent of Congress was not to arrest sheriffs. Well, my attorney went back and got the records from when they passed this law. And they actually brought it up. You mean we're going to threaten to arrest sheriffs? Let's say the sheriff shall do this and we're going to arrest him if he doesn't? And it was right before the Christmas break. And so you know how they get in a hurry then? And they said, yeah, just leave it. Nobody's going to arrest the sheriffs or whatever, but just leave it in there. And so Judge Roll gave it to us. He said, because we were seeking an injunction against that law. And we actually got an injunction. And that's all part of the court record. You can look all that up. The best review of this case that I ever found was Cornell University. And if you look up the whole case, you'll see what every judge said about it, including Justice Stevens, which I have on here a little bit, I think. And it's also in your little review of the case. I highly recommend that you go through this, highlight it, and maybe mark it up. Because the Justice Stevens, who dissented, who gave the opinion for the dissenting, if you look at page 14, if Congress believes that such a statute will benefit the people of the nation and serve the interests of cooperative federalism, better than an enlarged federal bureaucracy, because we know how federal government hates enlarged federal bureaucracies, right? Good gosh. Then we should respect both its policy judgment and its appraisal of its constitutional power. He just said they should let Congress be the judge of their own power. Why do we need the Supreme Court then? He just said, well, we ought to go home and let them do what they want. Well, isn't that what they do anyway? Pretty much you get to do whatever you want in Washington. Until Robert says that if it's a tax, it's constitutional. So anyway, we won the injunction, and it was an amazing legal precedent. So Cleo, anybody know what a Cleo is? Chief Law Enforcement Officer, of course, yeah. And so they called the sheriffs in this ruling. And this is actually from the Brady Bill itself. So this is the first time to see the federal government calling the sheriffs the Cleo. Who did they bring the document to? The sheriffs. And who did they do this to all across the country? Sheriffs. There's like a couple of places that it went otherwise, but they don't have sheriffs. In Connecticut, they actually voted sheriffs out of Connecticut about 15 years ago. There's no sheriffs in Connecticut. There's no sheriffs in Alaska or Hawaii. They call the court security guy sheriff in Hawaii, but he's not an elected.
What do they have?
They have state police or city police. That's it. Police state or state police, same thing.
Wow, so they're not elected at all.
No, they just answer. And in Hawaii and other places, they actually have another thing that I hate about what law enforcement does, especially on traffic enforcement. They actually set up roadblocks just to see if you're wearing your seatbelt. Yeah, seatbelt enforcement administrative checkpoint. I'm sorry. That's insane. Insane. Okay. And if you live in a free country, as much as I love and hope people are using seatbelts, if we lived in a free country, we'd let people choose whether or not they wear a seatbelt. I thought freedom meant we make our own choices. Yeah, no. So this is the threat of arrest. Under a separate provision of the Gun Control Act, everybody know what the Gun Control Act is? That's the one of 1968, after all the assassinations in America. Martin Luther King, JFK, RFK. Any person who knowingly violates the section of the GCA amended by the Brady Bill, because that's what the Brady Bill amended the National Gun Control Act, shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year or both. And so Janet Reno tried to interpret the law for the judge, and she said, no, we're not going to arrest the sheriff. And he said, in the judge's decision, he said Janet Reno is not allowed to interpret the law for Congress or to say what Congress meant. So we got our injunction. Do you understand what that means? I'm the first guy in American history to get an injunction against Bill Clinton on a non-sexual matter. And we won't take that subject any further. Okay. And now, this to me is mind-boggling. That we still have sheriffs in this country, or any law enforcement, I don't care, chiefs of police, any peace officer, who would allow the IRS unfettered access in your community. Well, the people owe taxes, and of course we have this natural, wonderful, ethical, lawful organization known as the IRS, and they'll take care of people, and they'll get the money that the federal government deserves, and it'll all be handled in an appropriate manner. You are nuts if you believe that. I'm telling you that right now. This is what Ronald Reagan said about our tax structure. Our federal tax system is, in short, utterly impossible, utterly unjust. Well, who's supposed to protect Californians from injustice and unjust laws? It's not going to be the IRS, and it's not going to be the federal government. It's got to happen here locally.
It's not going to be the governor.
No. It's completely counterproductive. It reeks with injustice and is fundamentally un-American. And what are we going to do? We're just going to let it keep going. Even though we have called in the IRS time and time and time again for the crimes that they have committed, when they were talking to Loretta Lynch about how they were using the IRS to go after Constitution groups and Tea Party groups, what does she do? I swear, to blah, 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 I did nothing wrong, and I plead the fifth, goodbye, give me my retirement. What? And how many of you are going to allow the IRS to continue to do what? Baseless and unconstitutional random audits. I'm telling you, if I was sheriff, I'd write a notice the very next day to the IRS, you're not doing that to citizens in my county again. Okay? And I hope we don't have to have this discussion and take it any further, because I will take further action. And if they come into my county, they better dang well check with me first. And we've had sheriffs require that. Okay? That's not out of the question. What do we know about the IRS? They have been used as political hitmen by the last 5, 6 presidents in a row. You know what? Nixon during Watergate actually had the IRS or FBI and CIA fighting each other, because he pitted them against each other. And they were supposed to take care of his political enemies for him. I guess we found out how that worked out for him. Britain, this is Thomas Paine in The American Crisis, or Common Sense. Britain with an army to enforce her tyranny. That's what we have in Washington with the FDA, EPA, IRS, on and on. They have an army of people enforcing their tyranny. And so of course they don't abolish them. And how many times have Republicans told us that we were going to make the tax forms that big for everybody? And you just fill out the postcard, you send it in, you pay it in, you know. They're not going to do it. They talk about it. Ted Cruz, his big thing was that and abolishing the IRS. When I ran for Congress last month, I said the same thing. You cannot have American liberty and an IRS. Oh, well, who's going to collect that? Well, originally the states collected income tax. Not income tax, they didn't have it then. They collected federal taxes. Income tax should not be in existence. Okay? 16th Amendment should have never happened. And it probably lawfully didn't happen correctly.
Sir, was it ever ratified by the states?
See, that's where I don't believe it was. And if there's evidence to show that it did not.
Well, even if it was, there's 2 Supreme Court cases right after it was initiated that stated that that still is not a tax for citizens because it's a capitation tax.
Right.
It only applies to
It's not a lawful tax. But anyway, look at what he says here. This is again Thomas Paine, who inspired the troops at the Battle of Trenton when Washington crossed the Delaware. That's where a lot of this came, and Washington had all his troops read Thomas Paine. He was a total inspiration. But back in the day when they were having this fight with King George III and English Parliament established what law? It was called the Stamp Act. And the Stamp Act did what? It was a tax on all paper goods. All paper goods. And so they said, okay, we'll repeal the Stamp Act. And they replaced it with the Declaratory Act, right here. I should have that in yellow. The Declaratory Act. And you know what the Declaratory Act said? It was like, to me, it was like Obamacare. It allowed Britain to legislate regarding the colonists in anything. In other words, we can do to you anything we want. That's really what Obamacare was. If they can do that, they can do anything. Okay? And that's what they're saying. And Paine goes, if that's not slavery, then there's not slavery on the face of the earth. And that's why Paine was so right. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this right now. If government could do anything to you they want, that's slavery. How close are we? Very. They control how we breathe, how we live, how we can do our own land. They can take our land away anytime they want. EPA takes more land and destroys more jobs than any other gang on the face of the planet. And we still allow them free access to everything. Oh, we can't abolish EPA, then what would we do for environmental protection? Every state has their own. Just like education, why do we need a federal one and a state one and a county one? And we have to send all this money to Washington, D.C.? Why? It's ridiculous. And they're just going to keep doing it. There's nobody draining the swamp on that yet. You know, have I appreciated some of the things that Trump has done? Yes. And do I appreciate that he's there? Yes. But this draining the swamp has really got to be for real. Okay. This is Jennifer Long. She was an IRS agent. She actually testified before Congress in 1998 that the IRS fabricated evidence against citizens who they knew could not afford to defend themselves. She testified. Another IRS agent testified, but only in camera. In other words, he was silhouetted and his voice muffled because he was so afraid of the IRS coming after him afterwards. Why would we have a Gestapo-like agency where people who work for it would be afraid of such retaliation? Why have we allowed this to continue? Do you know the best way to stop this? County by county and state by state. We stop the IRS and say, this isn't going to happen here. We're not going to abuse or victimize our citizens in this county. Why do we have people afraid of that? Oh my goodness. Okay, you want more proof? Okay, here's one. USA Today. What was the date? March 27, 2015. U.S. drug agents engaged in sex parties. Cartels supplied the prostitutes. These are DEA agents in Colombia, in Bogota, having parties down there. And who are they supposed to be fighting? Oh, they're supposed to be destroying the cartels. Instead, while they're down there, the cartels are giving these guys prostitutes. Well, where did we hear about this happening? Also in Latin America. I can't remember if it's Mexico or probably the same area. Secret Service were hiring, at least they pay for theirs. They don't get these gratuitous prostitutes. They pay for them. What was the big problem with that? The Secret Service thought they were charging too much. And did anybody get a letter in their file? Did they get disciplined in any way? Did they get fired? Did they get charged for taking bribes? No.
That's not illegal.
And well, every bit of this is illegal. Yeah. And and by the way, what did the government investigation show? For years, DEA agents posted in Colombia engaged in sex parties. For years. Probably still happening. Why? Nobody did anything about it. Just have to make sure it's quieter and nobody finds out. And we're trusting this federal government, and we're trusting the DEA here in California to conduct themselves properly. Why would you? And after the border, the federal government has no jurisdiction in your states to do this, especially without your permission. They don't. Secret Service has jurisdiction over counterfeiting. They can come in your county to do that. You still want to know, but that's the only jurisdiction they have. Or to protect the president while he's there, or in the dignitaries. I'm telling you what, remember when I said I wasn't giving my opinions? I did not write this article. I wonder if maybe a sheriff candidate would walk out on the DEA coming into his county and wanted to do a drug bust. Yeah, I wonder. See, I have never done this. I've never broken the law in such a manner. No way. I think I've been speeding in my car before. And maybe I've rolled through a few stops. And you want me to tell you something else? Look at some of your fines out here for traffic matters. And you want to see if you violate the 8th Amendment? What the 8th Amendment says, no excessive fines or bail and no cruel and unusual punishment. That's the 8th Amendment supreme law of the land. Now you tell me some of the fines for your traffic out here. $700 for some fines out here. $500 for rolling through a stop sign out here. Okay? It's absurd and it's against the law to charge that. It's excessive fines and bail. No, I didn't make any of that stuff up. And here's Thomas Paine. Man, I love Paine. What signifies it to me? Whether he who destroys my property and kills or threatens to kill me is a king or a common man, my countryman or not my countryman. Whether it be done by an individual villain or an army of them, if we reason to the root of things, we shall find no difference. Neither can we any just cause be assigned. Why should we punish one in one case and pardon on the other? That's the epitome of the federal government. FBI never got in trouble for fabricating evidence after Waco. You know what? I abhor the fact that the FBI shooter, Lauren Horiuchi, shot and killed Vicki Weaver while she's holding her baby. She didn't have a gun. And they killed her, blew her head off almost, high-powered rifle. And sprayed her two young daughters, Rachel and Sarah, with their mom's brains. I'm not making any of that up. And then 1 year later, he's doing the same thing when people are trying to get out of a burning building. And the FBI said, we didn't do it. That was a suicide pact. So I was asked by Solar Fortune to speak at their convention in Las Vegas. There were 5 people there who I'd never met before or never heard of before in my life. They wanted me to sit at their table, my wife and me. It was 5 survivors of Waco. Sheila Martin, Clyde Doyle's mother, and Dave Thibodeau, drummer, and I can't remember the other. And I asked every one of them, you tell me the truth right now. Was there a suicide pact in there? He said, that's a farce, Sheriff. There was no suicide pact. David Koresh didn't kill those people. And I said, you, Clyde Doyle, you lost your daughter in there. He said, yeah, I tried to get her, but my hands and arms were burning. His skin was falling off his arms when he came out. He said, I couldn't get to her. And Sheila Martin lost all her children and her husband. She told me the same thing. I said, you would think these people would hate David Koresh if he had done a suicide pact and started the fight. First of all, if you're knocking over walls with a tank, and you know that you've already shut off all the utilities and the only source of heat and light are kerosene lamps, what do you think is going to happen? Come on. And then the FBI lied about this. Said they didn't use any pyrotechnic devices. Remember that? 3 years later, they find 2 spent pyrotechnic devices that they used. Fabricating evidence. I've never done that. I've never fabricated evidence. I've never done that in my life. Never would consider it. I would never hide exculpatory evidence. I would never do that either. Our job is to protect the rights of the accused, not to win a case and mark up our win-loss column. That's all they're after these days, especially in federal courts. Federal judges have been so evil in the way they've treated people there. Why we should punish in one case and pardon in the other. That's Washington, D.C. all the way. It is incontestable. This is back to the Supreme Court decision in Mack Prince. It is incontestable that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty, although the state surrendered, and that's a bad word. We did not surrender rights. We delegated rights. But Scalia makes a comeback. This is the only mistake I really saw that he made in this whole thing. But the states, he said, retain a residuary and inviolable sovereignty. Don't you wish that California knew that our state sovereignty was inviolable? We would have turned on the water 5 years ago. We wouldn't allow the federal government to come in and destroy our farms and ranches. Residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. This is the equation you need to know. And this is the one you have in the little book. Where's my little book? Oh, here it is. This is in there. This is all from the Mack case, the Mack Prince case. It's in there. This quote's in there. The one before this is in there. This is Scalia taking you through the equation, the scientific, if not political or constitutional or lawful equation. He's taken you through the process of knowing and understanding the law. I told you I would not give you my opinions. This is not my opinion. This is my case, though. The Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. Then what kind do they have, Justice Scalia? What kind of powers? Well, he tells us. Only discrete, enumerated ones. And they're not supposed to steal them, but the states have allowed it. The true guards of the Republic, the states, have failed to make sure they stayed within their perimeters. Then he says, well then, he asks the question, Scalia, how do we keep them discrete and enumerated? By implication of rendering this express by the 10th Amendment's assertion. My dear friends, let me ask you another lawful question. Who's supposed to assert the 10th Amendment? The FBI, the IRS, Congress, states. And I'm telling you right now, every city, every county, every school board, every sheriff, everyone who's taken an oath is required to assert the Bill of Rights. And the 10th Amendment is one of those. And we promised when we took our jobs that we would. And then he quotes the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. We have to exercise that power. It is an innate right. It is our responsibility. And Madison said, erect the barriers against the encroachments of the national authority. That's what we do when we interpose. I'm not advocating violence here. Far from it. I'm establishing a way to prevent it. Because the people, if you'll look on the first page of my book, The County Sheriff, and I quote Madison, Jefferson there. Where's the book? Oh. And he says, when all government, I believe it's on the first page, I'm positive it's on the first page, it's my book, I should know. When all government shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided and become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. If we don't enforce the 10th Amendment, if we don't stand for freedom, if we allow Washington to control everything, then we've got back right where we were, full circle back to Great Britain. King George III government. And we've come full circle. Judge Andrew Napolitano has said on his show numerous times on Fox that we've come full circle. We have. How do we get it back? We have it that the states and the counties and the sheriffs and everybody here start erecting the barriers. Enforce the 10th Amendment. The great innovation of this design is that our citizens would have two political capacities, one state and one federal. Get that next line. Each protected from incursion by the other. That's pretty powerful. This is all in that little book, The Victory for State Sovereignty. This is all from Scalia in the Matt Prince case. Pretty powerful stuff, huh? As Madison expressed, that the local and municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. The Supremacy Clause does not grant supremacy to the federal government. Read it. It says, when they follow the Constitution, they have supremacy. Heck, they haven't followed the Constitution in decades. So they have very little supremacy. It's only supreme if it's pursuant to the Constitution. And he makes that clear here also. Now, Scalia gives us a review in the case, the only time that sheriffs have ever sued the government and won a case. I would expect that sheriffs, even a candidate who wants to find an excuse to walk out the room, might be curious about what this case did. The separation of the two spheres is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. What two spheres? Federal government sphere authority and the state government. State government sphere is 10 times bigger than the federal government. We have a lot more responsibility and we have a lot more regulatory authority. But we still can't violate the Second Amendment, which your governor doesn't understand. A lot of other people don't either. Structural protections of liberty is keeping those two spheres separate. Just as the separation of the independence of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny from either front. Do we have that today? Do we have a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government?
No.
Well, the only way that's going to be healthy is if we make it that way. When we bow down to the federal government and say, oh yeah, you guys can do whatever you want, please do, and we'll send you money for it too. Astonishing. They will violate the Constitution and we'll pay them to do it. Yeah. Man. What a country. Hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other. At the same time, each will be controlled by itself. Any question as to whether or not the federal government will control itself? Tammy, you got a question about that one?
They're completely out of control.
Yeah. I don't see too much self-control over it, okay? And get this one, where you think that you have to do and go along with the feds, especially the law enforcement, the power of the federal government would be augmented immeasurably, Scalia says, if it were able to impress into its service and at no cost to itself, the police officers of the 50 states. We do not have to go along with those guys. And so Stockton, California, Stockton PD, when they went with the Department of Education SWAT team and batter rammed that door down, that was way out of line that they supported that. Oh, we have to go along. Yeah.
What do you think about the sanctuary thing?
Oh, the sheriff's going to get that stopped real soon. And from what I understand, there's actually some kickback going on with that, and I love it. When I started seeing the other cities and counties were starting to tell the state, we're not going along with the sanctuary city, and we're going to work to get these people. Now, does the sheriff have to do immigration enforcement? No. Would it be proper for him to turn people over to ICE? Yes, it would. And the sheriffs and chiefs would do that? Absolutely, they should. Man, I thought we were here to promote safety and protect people from criminals. Man, have we seen some bad criminals there. Okay? The federal government we held may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program. Okay? Don't you wish your state did that? This is my favorite quote from the decision. It's in there. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. Did you get that? I love that part. It divides power among sovereign states and among sovereign people. Among sovereigns. And among branches of government, precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. Crisis of the day, don't you like that?
Oh, yeah.
The motto of Rahm Emanuel and Barack Obama. Even if you have to create one, and they did, they created the crisis that there's a healthcare problem in America. He created that so he could enslave you with their solution. And now we have Republicans going along. It used to be that the Republicans were saying, repeal this horrible law. Now it's repeal and replace with another socialistic program. Republicans are so stupid. They just keep going along, and now we have this wonderful omnibus budget of adding to the debt. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not advocating this right now, but somebody tells me ready, set, go, and I'll join it in a minute. Because what do we know about the Democrats and Republicans? They do not care about deficit spending. They do not care about the national horrendous debt that we have. So why do I have to pay taxes? Just add that to the debt and leave me alone. They don't care. They don't care. And it's only the same amount they just did. It's only about 1.2 trillion that we pay in income tax to the federal government. Leave me alone. Let me keep my money. And you guys add it to the debt. You don't care if it's for your programs. Leave me alone. Add it to the debt. They obviously neither one care. So why have an IRS? Get rid of the IRS, save that $10 billion a year, and let me keep my money, and I'll send my kids to college. We won't have any more student loans. Get rid of those. Those are enslaving. But let me finish here. We got to get. Can I go to 12:05? Sure. Oh, thanks. 12:10. I love this quote though. Look how solid Scalia was on principle. You know, and again, I didn't make this up, but man, Scalia. This is the most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of America. And 2 small-town sheriffs did it. This is the order of the court. This is Scalia talking, the last paragraph of the decision. We held in New York, that's a New York case I told you about earlier. Congress cannot compel the states to enact or enforce a federal regulatory program. Today we hold, in the Mack case, Mack Prince, Congress cannot circumvent that prohibition by conscripting the state's officers directly. In other words, go around the state legislature, go right to the sheriff and say, this is what you're going to do for us, or we're going to arrest you. The federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the state's officers, or those of their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. And then he goes here because the states all wanted to say, and we hear this today, like administrative checkpoints are okay as long as you're bringing in a lot of arrests. That doesn't make it constitutional. And then we actually had that in court in Tucson, and it got brought up. So Scalia brings it up now. It matters not whether policy making is involved, and no case-by-case weighing of the burdens or benefits is necessary. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with our constitutional system of dual sovereignty. What a man. And this is where they brought it up. The attorney for the federal government actually brought up, well, in the first 4 months of the implementation of the Brady Bill background check, we denied, seriously, she said in 4 months, we denied 250,000 felons from gaining access to guns in this country.
You're supposed to do that anyways.
Well, but if anybody thinks 250,000 prohibited felons went into gun shops and said, I'm a felon, please arrest me right now. And that's what they said it did. And it didn't. Obviously, they were lying. But the judge rebuked her, and this is what he said. Counselor, do not pretend in this courtroom that your statistical analysis somehow equates to constitutionality.
Oh, that's just awesome.
Oh, no. Is this judge something else? I mean, yeah, he was. He was. He would have been. He would have been. Yeah. And he left us way too soon. Now, this is where we're going to get some real training going. David, try to turn the front row off and then maybe...
It's one or the other. It's getting darker.
That's not bad. Not having a cell phone with him. Seeing how this is December 1st, 1955, you can turn on. 2 officers get called to the scene and they arrest an American citizen because she refused to give her seat to a white man. I'm just still wondering if we keep doing this today. I really believe we are. They're okay, I'm giving my opinion. Because I think that we've just shifted the abuses to one group to another. One, I think that we've done it to ranchers. Anybody concerned about these radical, crazy, extremist ranchers, the Bundys, and that they were the last rancher standing in Clark County, Nevada? That 53 ranchers were succeeding in a great business and providing a great product to America in Clark County, huge county. And yet now all of them are gone except the Bundys, and they put them in prison and tried to end their ranch also, confiscating all their cows, killing and slaughtering some of the cows from machine guns from a helicopter. That was proven, okay? And then they buried them with a backhoe and all this stuff. And yet, did the media ever ask once, why did the federal government put all these other ranchers out of business, and is this guy standing to try to stop that? That's what it was about. And why are they destroying our food supply? Why are they destroying the ranching industry? Why have they done this to so many farms and ranchers? And why have they shut off the land and fenced us out? And why, when a sheriff and a county commissioner tried to do that in southern Utah, they arrested a county commissioner? They actually arrested the county commissioner. And he's one of us. And the sheriff didn't, and the sheriff actually said this, I talked to him. He actually talked to the feds and said, no, we're not going to arrest him. And then they ended up charging him, lying to the sheriff. The sheriff doesn't trust him at all anymore. But we still have these untrustworthy agencies controlling our land. Why? Do you know how much land they own in the east? The federal government owns maybe 2% of New York, maybe 1.5% of Texas, 1 or 2% of Ohio, and all these other in the Midwest and east. Federal government doesn't own anything. How much do they own here? 50? Is it 50%?
Nevada is 98%.
Nevada is 90%. Arizona is 70%. Utah is 50%. Utah has actually started taking back some of their federal lands. Did you know that?
Yes.
Why are we allowing them to run our state? You're not a state. You're an enclave of the federal government. If they own your land, well, heaven's sakes, you're not, geographically, you're not even a California. For heaven's sakes. Now you wonder why people want to form a Jefferson state? Why would you wonder? Be a state and then people won't want to leave. Enforce the law. Uphold and defend the Constitution. Protect the right to keep and bear arms. Well, if you have a school shooting, it doesn't apply. You know, that thing really made me sad yesterday. That our children believe that gun control is going to make them safer. And that they don't and have not understood the law, have not been taught the law. Man, that really made me sad. It's a sad state of the nation. Let me real quickly, and I know we don't have much time. Do you know what should have happened this day? Let me tell you. The sheriff should have taken this call. Should have brought a deputy with him. He should have walked right up to Rosa Parks, and she was scared to death. And a lot of people say this was contrived. It may have been. NAACP bailed her out right after this happened, so it could have been. She still could have been lynched. And this was still a great risk to her and family. Regardless, the sheriff should have walked up there and said something like, ma'am, just what seems to be the problem here? And she says, why can't we just be left alone? And this good sheriff sits down next to her, reaches over, shakes her hand, and says, ma'am, what you did here today took a lot of courage. And it would be an honor for my deputy and me to escort you home safely. And that's what we should have heard of. We should have never heard of Rosa Parks. We should have heard of the constitutional guards, the guards of the republic, the oath keeper sheriff or deputy or police, who enforced what our country was based on. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Let me tell you right there, that is not my opinion. That is the rule of law. It happens to coincide with my opinion. I love Rosa Parks. She should not have been arrested that day. And the Bundys should not have been arrested when they were. And those farms and ranchers should not have been destroyed. And we should have had sheriffs standing and protecting people when they're trying to protect their personal property.
Or the Hammond.
No, I'm not going to finish it. Hey, let's hang on. Badge versus the badge. This is an article in Range Magazine in 2003. I never even heard of this, but we had a sheriff in Idaho, in Owe County, Sheriff Gary Amon, who stood up to the BLM and said that he would not allow them to do anything in his county unless they checked with him first. Right here in San Bernardino, California, Sheriff Gary Penrod said, look at that. He revoked local law enforcement authority from the federal government across all 20,000 square miles of his county and advised them to consult him first before taking any action on private property. This is a sheriff. Amen. And this is Ken Jones. I know Ken pretty well. What they really want is to extend federal authority over all law enforcement in the United States, whether local people agree with them or not. Well, it's not in this county. It should be the motto of every sheriff in the country. It's not going to happen here. Okay? Badge versus the badge. When we live under a pernicious power long enough, no matter how oppressive, we grow so accustomed to the yoke that its removal seems frightening, even wrong. That's Attorney Jerry Spence, who represented Randy Weaver after they killed his son and after they killed his wife. And they charged him with the murder of Marshall Deegan, even knowing that he was not there at the time of the shootout that killed Sam Weaver, 14-year-old son. And really, Sam Weaver was very small for his age. He looked 10. And the first, I don't know if you know this, but at Ruby Ridge, first, the dog is smelling something, and the dog striker takes off into the woods. Sam follows with his gun. Kevin Harris, an adult friend, follows with his gun. Randy stays in the cabin. They go down there. It's U.S. Marshals, there's 6 of them, trying to serve a warrant on Randy because he missed a court date. That's all it was, he missed a court date. And if you go back to the records, it was the wrong date that he was notified about. And so U.S. Marshals are there to haul him in, and they're going to kill him or have a shootout, whatever they're going to do. And the dog exposes their location, and so they riddle the dog with a machine gun.
Oh.
So Sam, of course, gets real upset that somebody's killing his dog. He shoots back. They kill Sam, riddle him with a machine gun, and for some reason Kevin Harris doesn't get hit, but Marshall Deegan does, and he dies. And that's when they come back with the FBI and the tanks and all the other stuff the rest of the time. They shoot Randy the next day, and they shoot his wife and kill her. Randy didn't die, and Kevin Harris got shot also, and he almost died. And then they charge Randy with murder. And they give all the U.S. Marshals medals of valor. Yeah, medals of valor.
Killing a 14-year-old.
Killing a 14-year-old boy. That's what they did.
That
This is the sheriff I was talking about. This is Sheriff Eldridge, the one that got lied to from the BLM about arresting the county commissioner. When asked if he considered himself a constitutional sheriff, San Juan County, Utah Sheriff Rick Eldridge said, "I do. I thought every sheriff was supposed to be a constitutional sheriff." That's our job. Hallelujah. That's our job. So, my dear friends, I don't live here. Your new sheriff is not going to work for me. I'm not going to tell your sheriff how to do his job. If he ever wants training for all of his officers, I'd be happy to come back and do that. But I really want to say, the 2 candidates that are here, expressing that kind of humility and that kind of strength, both of you, that you're willing to learn, that you're willing and you have the courage to show it, and that you're running against a coward who is none of those things. I think that's telltale of a wonderful opportunity you as the people here have to choose a constitutional sheriff with the courage and the humility to learn and to try. And like I said about Deputy Lennox, that's all we're after. He was very humble about what he did. He was smart. He kept the peace. He didn't allow a situation to escalate that shouldn't. And boy, we need de-escalation training, don't we? Yeah. And we can end a lot of these problems. And the wedge that Obama tried to drive between law enforcement and the people, especially minorities. Did Obama ever once come out and say, maybe he should have gone to Ferguson and even been there and said, this is not what we do. This is not what we represent. This is not America. Go home. And then the one lady that came and slapped her kid and sent him home. We had one good parent there. Some of the parents were probably with their kids on some of that stuff. But leadership starts here locally. We didn't have it nationally. And this is where you do it here. You keep the peace. And that's really what I'm after. That's all I care about. I want to live in a peaceful America. I want to live in a peaceful county. And my dear friends, it boils down to this. Are we going to know and understand the basics? Or are we going to continue to bypass the basics? Well, when I went in 1983 as a rookie cop to that constitutional training by Dr. Skousen, he had all 240 cops get up, and he taught us like a little kindergarten exercise. I'm going to close with that, because I require all my students to do it. And when he said, promise me you'll teach these things to your children, I'm going to teach it to you too. Okay? And that night, I went home and I taught this to my children. My one son taught it to his choir class, and they did it in a choir performance. The whole choir did this. And yeah, it's kind of a kindergarten exercise, but I also call it America's political prayer. Now, it's not a prayer, but maybe it is a plea of some kind. And just so you remember, when I do this, it's going to take about 30 seconds, and I'll close with it, like I said. I learned this at police training with 240 big tough cops. And it goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Long may she be free. I hope you all have my card, or you need to get a hold of me or whatever else, or go through Tammy and get